My daughter is 16 years old and in high school. I noticed recently that she's been behaving in a bad manner, constantly commenting on other people's looks, belongings, calling them stuff that isn't cool, and just being insensitive. It's like she lost a filter or something, because usually she's polite, but my wife suspected that our daughter's sudden misbehavior occurred after she started hanging out with new girls from the school. Basically the mean type, and have picked on their behavior. I've sat with my daughter and had many discussions about how her behavior has been negatively affecting everyone around her. Our housemaid is the person most affected here, and my daughter has chosen her to be her target for hair, clothes, etiquette, criticism. She has complained about our daughter calling her offensive names like filthy and gross for cleaning certain areas in our house. I took a stand and explicitly told my daughter I'd punish her if she ever said stuff like that to our housemaid again. Last week my daughter had a party to go to. Earlier that day she called our housemaid filthy, so I grounded her by not letting her go to the party. She threw a fit and called our housemaid a liar, saying she never called her that. That was the end of it. Days later my daughter came to me saying she couldn't find her iPhone after looking everywhere. She asked me to call her number, and I did. My wife and I were stunned to discover that the iPhone was ringing inside our housemaid's bag. I had a confrontation with her immediately, and she denied and cried, saying she never touched the phone nor had any idea how it got there. I noticed my daughter calling her thief repeatedly, so I told her to stop and go to her room. I checked the indoor camera before continuing the argument and saw my daughter place her iPhone inside our housemaid's bag. I was livid. I apologized to the housemaid and gave her the rest of the day off. I then showed the video to my daughter, and she was absolutely speechless. I said what she did was immoral and straight up offensive to tamper with that poor woman's livelihood over a petty party she couldn't go to. I told her she was grounded and will have to spend the night in the backyard. She is a germaphobe. But she cried, begging me to not make her sleep with the dirt, insects, and hot temp. I refused to discuss it, or I'd make it 2 nights. My wife said I should go easy on her, but I said calling people filthy and accusing them of stealing wasn't okay. In fact, it was the absolute worst. I then went through with my punishment. The reason I chose this punishment was because of the fact that my daughter says she is a germaphobe and used this as excuse to insult others' hygiene and appearance. Our backyard has dirt and bugs in it, and this kind of things get her uncomfortable, but other than that the backyard is 100% safe. I am a 28 years old female, was named after a really obscure character from Greek mythology. My preferred nickname is taken from the end of my name. I always introduce myself with "I'm my name, but you can call me" nickname. None of my co-workers in the small business we work for have ever had a problem with this before, until Megan, the niece of Jeff, one of the 2 owners, was hired. Jeff and Dave co-own the business, but Dave does the actual day-to-day running of the business. I introduced myself and my nickname as usual, but she immediately said that Bessie, not the actual name, would be a better nickname because it comes from the beginning of my name, and that she liked it better. I told her I really didn't like that nickname and wouldn't answer to it, and asked her to please not call me Bessie, but she insisted that it was so much prettier and that I just needed to get used to it. For the next 2 months she tried to call me Bessie, but I completely ignored her whenever she addressed me that way. Even when I knew she really needed help with something, she would call my desk phone and say, "Hey, Bessie," I would reply, "You have the wrong number, there's no Bessie here," and hang up. She then tried to get some of the employees outside the office to start calling me Bessie, but I quickly shut that down. I usually finish my work early and help them with a lot of tedious little things that aren't part of my job description, and threatened to stop helping them unless they used my preferred nickname. Friday she decided she was going to get me to respond to Bessie no matter what. We have an open office design but are at opposite ends. She started calling out Bessie in a sing-song voice over and over again to try and annoy me enough to respond. Other coworkers got annoyed, most telling her to stop, and one, Lisa, telling me to just let her call me Bessie already. I refused, and she kept calling out Bessie louder and louder until Dave barged in. He'd been on a conference call with an important client and could hear her yelling from his office down the hall. He told her to be quiet and that if she called me Bessie one more time, he'd write her up and dock her pay. Later, Megan cornered me in the break room, called me in for getting her in trouble, and called me Bessie again for good measure just as Dave was walking in to heat up his lunch. He gave her a stern look and said, "I warned you." Then he walked to HR to have her written up. Lisa is saying I'm the for never helping Megan, and that, if I had been nicer or hadn't fought her so hard on the nickname, she probably would have given up on it a while ago, but because I made such a big deal out of it, it became a challenge. X and I had way too young. We're friendly co-parents. One big rule we share is if our daughter breaks something, she pays for it. Now, sis and I are the only grandkids. Aunt never married. Instead, she worked with GMA and GPA at their Seams Tri-store, and took it over when they retired. Sis's girlfriend proposed last year. GPA offered to make FSIL a custom suit, which she was over the moon about. GMA had me ask Sis what her dream dress was and record the convo. Sis, thinking it was just between us, told me in great detail what her dream dress was, though said it was way too expensive. So she would get something much cheaper. Well, a few months later GMA surprised Sis with her dream wedding dress. It FOT perfectly and everyone cried. Sadly, GMA recently passed away, which hit us all hard. Sis was devastated, but decided that the dress meant GMA would still be there with us at the wedding. The issue comes in with C. She's very large, much larger than Sis. 3 days ago, we decided to go visit Sis and see how she was doing. It was great, but then C asked if she could try on the dress. Sis politely said no. C made a face, but dropped it. Later, we decided to go grab dinner. Sis and I went to pick up our orders, but C decided to stay and play with Sis's dog. We got back, and the dress was destroyed. C had apparently tried to get it on, popping some seams, and got stuck. Instead of waiting for help, she cut her way out. The dress was hacked to bits. Sis was devastated and asked us to leave. I grounded C and called Aunt with some pictures, asking if it could be saved. She said there was no. She said she'd make a new one, but it wasn't the same. Then she dropped the bomb on me. GMA had hand-sewed most of the dress, used super expensive fabric, and put almost 500 hours in making that dress. Since it was the only family wedding we'd have. In total, the dress cost $12,000, give or take. C has about $15,000 saved from various jobs, as well as winning writing competitions. This was supposed to help her in college. I took her to the bank and set in motion transferring all the funds, since as her parent I still have control over it. $12,000 to Aunt to pay for the new dress. $3,000 to my sister's wedding, as an emotional distress tax. I explained exactly why this was happening to C, but she sobbed the entire time, asking what was she supposed to do for college and saying it wasn't her fault. I told her she could get a job if she didn't get a scholarship. And it was her fault for trying on the dress after she'd been told no, and for not waiting until we got back. A few popped seams could have been fixed. Hacking the dress to pieces couldn't. C told my ex, and while she agreed C was in the wrong after the full story, said I shouldn't have ruined her future for a free dress. I reminded her of our rule, and she still thinks I'm wrong. $3,000, that was to make up to my sister that C destroyed the last gift our dead grandma ever gave her. I consider that part of the price of destroying the dress, since even if Aunt remakes it, it's lost a great deal of its sentiment value. I pointed out how young we has her because I wanted to explain how a 31-year-old has a 16-year-old kid. I do not resent having her, she's the best thing I've ever done. I also brought up C's size because Sis has Crohn's disease and thus is very tiny. The dress was made her for size, and C is much larger than Sis. I love C as she is, but just holding the dress up, it was clear it wouldn't fit. The money was C's have fun at college money, not her college fund. My ex and I are paying for whatever scholarships don't. When she was asking what she would do for college, she was asking what did she do for fun and to buy things we didn't pay for. I got off the phone with my ex. I sent her the pictures, and she freaked. She apparently didn't believe me when I said it had been hacked apart, and believed it was just a few torn seams. She was pretty much on my side after. She told me that she spent the day badgering our daughter, asking her why she did what she did. And finally she cracked and said she was mad that grandma wasn't alive to make her a dress, and that it was unfair. My sister got a free beautiful dress as a reminder when my daughter got nothing, despite the many things she was given after the funeral. She tried it on, took it off when the seams popped, and then in anger hacked it apart. If she couldn't have a dress from grandma, no one could. Her own words. Honestly, knowing she did it on purpose has just made things worse. The fact that she could be so. I manage a team of employees in a very specialized industry. The employees are hired on 2-year contracts that are mostly automatically renewed. Salaries are fixed for the duration of the contract, but raises are negotiated at time of renewal. There are no non-competes. I have one employee, Sarah, who requested a meeting with me last week to discuss a possible raise. I informed her that it is a little early as her contract won't expire until Jan, and I would be happy to discuss it in November. She told me she would like to discuss it now as her current salary does not reflect the amount of work she is doing. So I set up a meeting with her on Friday and told her I will hear her out. To her credit, she gave well thought out presentation listing the average salary in her field, the extra responsibilities she had to take on, and the extra revenue she was able to generate, etc. In the end, she asked for a 19% raise to stay on. This was a substantial jump, but I thought she made some good points and, with inflation being what it is, I can sell it to the managing partner that we are locking down a good employee for 2 more years. After the presentation, I told her I will just approve the raise and talk to the managing partner about starting her new contract early. Since the only things we are changing are the salary numbers, we can have the new contract ready for her to sign by Tuesday. She seemed very surprised that I did not try to negotiate and looked a little shell-shocked that the meeting was over so quickly. So anyways, I spent the entire weekend selling the raise to the partners and harassing legal to get the documents ready. However, when I gave her the documents to sign this morning, she asked for another meeting to discuss salary. She informed me that after doing more research over the weekend, her pay is still not reflective of all the work she is doing. At this point, I got pretty annoyed and told her that we can discuss in 2 years. I thought that was the end of it, but after lunch she came to my office with 3 offers letters she received from our competitors. One in our city with a salary that is 2 to 3% higher, and 2 from other states that are 8 to 9% higher. She asks for the new salary to at least match the competitor in our city to stay. At this point I got very frustrated and told her that she is now free to work for our competitor, because her contract with us will not be renewed. She called me in. And left crying, immediately telling all her coworkers that I fired her for asking for a raise, which obviously caused quite an uproar. My wife thinks that I am the because I could have just said no. She probably had the other offers for a while and was never going to actually leave. She recommended that I offer her back the new contract. Anyways, I am contemplating going back to the office tomorrow and offering Sarah her new contract again. But I just felt like the relationship between us is ruined after this whole situation. Her currently contract is negotiated 2 years ago, which is why there is a discrepancy in pay with the current offers. There are also a lot of reasons for differences in salary even within the same city. Perhaps less PTO, maybe more responsibilities, maybe they lock them in the contract for 3 years instead of 2. Which is happening more and more now. Maybe they have a non-compete, or maybe they are better. I can't say. Her contract expires Jan, so she has plenty of time left at the company if she wants to finish out. Sarah is WFH today, so I sent her an email apologizing for overreacting yesterday, and informing her that she is an important member of our team and that I worked really hard to get her the raise she initially requested. The new offer still stands provided she return the signed contract to me today before 5 p.m. I would be happy to execute it immediately and get her sorted out before the next payment period. She emailed back also apologizing for her reaction yesterday and said that she enjoyed working here and feels like she really has an opportunity to grow. But she then ended the email asking if I would still be willing to reconsider upping the offer to match her other offer. At this point, I just can't even anymore. I basically ignored her email, and at 5:01 p.m. with no signed contract from her, I sent an email to the managing partner I was talking to all weekend. Hope this email finds you well. I am writing to inform you that Sarah has elected to decline the new contract as it is written. She has informed me that she received an offer from our competitor with a salary of XXX. I have attached a scanned document of the offer letter with this email for your convenience. She has requested that we match that salary to retain her services as our current offer is insufficient. As of right now, her contract expires January 22nd. Please advise on the next steps.